For 10 years, I believed I was living the dream, married to a man who made me feel seen, cherished, and brutally loved. But last week, one overheard conversation shattered everything. What if the person you trust most has been lying to you all along? What if your entire marriage was built on a lie? Let me tell you how I found out. It was a Thursday evening. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just another long day at the office. Just another evening at home. I had wrapped up a 70-hour work week, just barely holding on before quarterly numbers hit. I remember walking into the house, exhausted, but happy to see the lights on, the faint scent of garlic and roasted tomatoes drifting from the kitchen. "Hey, babe, I'm home," I called, expecting the usual. His goofy smile, a kiss on the cheek, maybe a new Spotify playlist he wanted to show me. No answer. I assumed he was probably on a work call, so I headed toward the hallway to hang up my coat when I heard his voice from the study. The door was cracked open just enough for sound to carry. At first, I wasn't paying attention. I had no intention of eavesdropping. But then I heard my name. "She has no idea," Sam said, laughing. Then came his friend's voice. Mike, I think. "Dude, I can't believe you actually pulled this off. 10 years. That's some next-level commitment." Sam chuckled again. "I told you. I played the long game, man. I knew from the day I met her that she was the ticket." "The ticket?" Mike repeated, laughing. "Yeah, rich girl, low self-esteem, classic combo. All I had to do was make her feel special, make her think she was the one. Now she's pulling in $300K a year, and I'm living stress-free." At that moment, I stopped breathing. Mike snorted. "Honestly, I don't know how you do it. I mean, she's not exactly easy on the eyes." Sam didn't defend me. He didn't say I was beautiful or even decent. He laughed, loudly. "It's all mindset, bro. Keep your eyes on the prize. You can learn to ignore a lot when you've got a solid plan." My ears were ringing. My face felt hot, like someone had slapped me. I backed away from the door, trembling, holding onto the wall to steady myself. That's when it hit me. Everything, every single moment, might have been fake. Our wedding in the mountains, the nights we stayed up talking about our future, the inside jokes, the way he used to call me his miracle. None of it meant anything to him. It was all a game. I don't remember walking upstairs. I don't remember how I made it to the bed. I just remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, numb. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I was in too much shock. Instead, I claimed I had a work emergency and spent the night on the living room couch. My excuse was weak, but he didn't question it. That night, just like every other night, he came downstairs, scooped me up in his arms, and carried me to bed. He kissed my forehead, whispered, "You work too hard," and pulled me close. I used to feel safe in his arms. That night, I felt trapped. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I couldn't look at him the same way. His smile, the one that used to make my day, now made my stomach twist. I went through the motions, made coffee, packed my work tote, kissed him on the cheek like always. But inside, I was unraveling. Over the next few days, I watched him. I really watched him. For the first time in years, I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see. I was seeing who he really was. The late-night gaming sessions, the disinterest in my work, my goals, my family, how he conveniently dodged conversations about money, long-term plans, or putting more hours into his job. Sam worked 35 hours a week. I worked double that. He never offered to take on more, never asked if I needed help. And when I brought up the idea of him advancing his career, he always brushed it off. "We're doing fine, babe. Don't stress." I used to think he was laid back. Now, I saw it as calculated, intentional. I finally broke down and told my friend Lisa everything. We sat at our usual cafe, tucked into the corner booth we claimed every Saturday. She listened, stunned, as I replayed every word of that FaceTime call. When I finished, she sat quietly for a moment, then said, "You know what you have to do, right?" "I don't," I said honestly. "I don't know what's real anymore." Lisa reached across the table and held my hand. "Then start there. Start with figuring out what's real. For you." That night, I sat Sam down. I told him I overheard everything. His eyes widened at first. Shock, maybe even fear. But he quickly slipped back into his usual calm mask. "It wasn't like that," he said. "Then tell me what it was," I replied, voice shaking. He gave a half-hearted laugh. "I was venting. Guys talk like that. You know how Mike is. He always exaggerates." I stared at him. "You said I wasn't attractive." He went silent. "You said I was a ticket. That I was your plan. That I made things easy. Were you venting when you said that too?" Still nothing. Finally, he sighed. "Look, maybe I got comfortable. Maybe I leaned on you more than I should have. But that doesn't mean I didn't care." "Did you love me?" I asked. "I don't know," he whispered. There it was. A decade of my life reduced to I don't know. I walked out of that room with tears streaming down my face, and a suitcase packed before midnight. I left our apartment at 12:47 a.m., with a single suitcase, a laptop bag, and my dignity in pieces. For a long time, I sat in my car in the parking garage, keys in the ignition, hands gripping the steering wheel, but not moving. I didn't cry. Not then. I think I was too shocked to cry. Instead, I drove. I didn't even know where I was going. Just away. Away from the apartment that now felt like a stage set. Away from the bed where I used to feel safe. Away from a man I had spent 10 years building a life with, only to realize he had never been building it with me. Just on me. I ended up at Lisa's. She opened the door in her pajamas, eyes wide when she saw my suitcase. "You left," she whispered. "I had to," I said. And then I finally broke down. She pulled me in without another word and held me as I sobbed. It felt like my soul was releasing 10 years of illusion all at once. That night, I slept on her couch, the same couch where we once drank wine and complained about college boyfriends, where we dreamed about becoming CEOs, wives, mothers. Somehow it felt poetic, that it would now be the place where I began to reassemble the wreckage of my life. The next few days were a blur. I called in a few favors at work and took a week off, no explanations. Just said it was personal. My team understood, maybe more than they let on. Lisa helped me draft a list. Find a lawyer, separate finances, make sure all assets were secure. It was like preparing for battle, only the war was internal. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old emails for financial records, I found a message Sam had forwarded from a real estate agent about a beach house in Florida. I had never heard of it before. I clicked on the email chain and saw something that made my blood run cold. Once we finalize the joint account transfer, she'll never question where the money went. She doesn't even track the secondary savings. He had been planning a second life. And I I had been paying for it. That was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I felt rage. Real, hot, focused rage. Not the kind that burns out of control, but the kind that sharpens your vision. That reminds you that you're not broken. You're awake. The lawyer I hired was a woman named Dana Martinez, mid-40s, sharp, fearless, and deeply empathetic. When I told her everything, she didn't flinch, just took notes, asked strategic questions, and gave me a look that said, "You've got this." "This isn't just betrayal," she said. "It's manipulation, financial abuse, emotional deceit, maybe even fraud depending on what we find." Hearing someone say it out loud validated everything I'd been feeling. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a form of violence. "I want out," I told her. "Clean. Fast. No drama. No second chances." She nodded. "Then let's get to work." While Dana handled the legal side, I began focusing on something much harder. Healing. For the first time in years, I had quiet mornings. No Sam rushing in asking where his socks were. No passive-aggressive remarks about how I worked too hard. No pressure to perform love like a dance routine. Just silence. At first, it felt unbearable. Then, peaceful. I began going for walks every morning. No phone, no podcasts. Just me, the sky, and my thoughts. I reread books I loved in college. I reconnected with my brother, who always thought something was off about Sam, but never pushed. I even went to therapy. My therapist, Dr. Elaine Foster, had kind eyes and a voice like warm tea. She didn't tell me what to do. She just asked questions. What part of you believed you didn't deserve more? What did love mean to you before this marriage? What does it mean now? One day she said, "It's not just that he fooled you, it's that you were taught to value being needed over being chosen. That's what we need to unpack." That sentence sat with me for days. Weeks passed. I moved into a short-term rental, a small but cozy townhouse near the water. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The air smelled like salt and freedom. I slept through the night for the first time in months. Sam called, of course. Texted too. Said he messed up. That he was confused. That he missed us. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want to waste energy proving anything. My silence was my closure. What I did want was truth. And I found it, piece by piece, in places I never thought to look. In my strength, in my work, in my friends, in my ability to laugh again. One evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset and realized something that stopped me cold. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him, not at myself, not at the universe for throwing me into a storm, because the storm taught me how to swim. I won't pretend everything's perfect. Healing isn't linear. Some mornings, I still wake up expecting to see Sam beside me. Some nights, I wonder how much of my past was ever real. But most days, I feel free. I've started journaling again. I'm mentoring a younger analyst at work. I even signed up for a pottery class. Something I've always wanted to do but never had time for. The truth is, I'm still rebuilding. But this time, I'm not building for two. I'm building for me. And that makes all the difference. It had been 6 weeks since I left Sam. 6 weeks since I learned the person I'd trusted the most had never truly loved me. 6 weeks since I stopped being a wife and started being someone I was just beginning to recognize. Someone who chose herself. I thought I was done with him. Emotionally, legally, practically. I had untangled everything. The accounts were split. The lease was terminated. The lawyer handled every last paper. But then, one Tuesday morning, a letter arrived. Not an email. Not a text. A real letter. Handwritten on cream-colored stationery, with my name spelled out in ink. From Sam. For a moment, I just stared at it. My fingers tingled. Part of me didn't want to open it. The other part, the part that still sometimes woke up wondering what had been real and what had been performance, couldn't help it. I opened the envelope. It wasn't long, just 2 pages. No dramatics, no begging. He wrote, "I don't know if you'll read this, or if you'll care, but there are things I need to say. Not to fix anything, but because you deserve the truth. I know what I said to Mike was inexcusable. I was trying to impress someone who never mattered, and in the process, I destroyed someone who always did. I've spent the last few weeks thinking about how I became the kind of man who could hurt someone like you. I can't change the past, but I can at least admit it. I was weak. I saw your light, and instead of standing beside you, I hid in your shadow. I used your love like a shield for my own failures. And I confused comfort for love. That was my crime. You didn't deserve any of it. And I know you're probably better off now. But in case there's a part of you that still wonders, yes, I loved you. Maybe not in the way you deserved, but in the only way I knew how." I read it 3 times. Then I sat in silence, clutching the letter to my chest, like it could answer the ache that still lived in the quiet corners of my heart. And then something unexpected happened. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sympathy either. I felt a closure. Not because what he said fixed anything, but because I finally realized I no longer needed his apology to move forward. I had already been moving forward. That weekend, I decided to do something symbolic. I drove 2 hours north to a retreat center I'd found online, an old farmhouse turned wellness retreat, run by a retired therapist and her husband. It was quiet, simple, and completely offline. No emails, no calls, just space to breathe. On the second day, during a guided journaling session, we were asked to write a letter, not to anyone, but from our future self. What would your future self want to tell you right now? Here's what I wrote to Dear Me. I know you're scared. You're tired. You're still wondering if choosing yourself was selfish, if walking away means you failed. But I want you to know, you didn't fail. You survived. You loved someone with your whole heart. And when that love wasn't returned with the honesty it deserved, you chose truth over illusion. That's not failure. That's strength. Someday soon, you'll laugh again. Not out of obligation, not to make anyone else feel comfortable, but because your soul will finally be free. You'll trust again, love again, but more importantly, you'll trust yourself. Don't rush it. Healing takes time, but you're on the right path. Keep going. I wept after writing that. Not because I was sad, but because, for the first time in months, I believed every word. The next morning, I joined the sunrise meditation at the lake. There were 6 of us, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea, watching the fog rise off the water. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No noise, no questions, no expectations. Just stillness. After the session, an older woman named Marianne, probably in her 70s, sat beside me. She'd lost her husband 5 years earlier, after 40 years of marriage. She looked at me kindly and said, "You've got the eyes of someone who's rebuilding." I smiled. It's been a year. That's when it gets interesting, she said with a wink. We talked for an hour. About grief, about rediscovery, about what happens when the life you planned collapses and you have to start from scratch. You know what I learned? She said, as we watched a heron glide across the water. You don't really know yourself until the life you thought you wanted falls apart. That's when the real you shows up. On the drive home, I kept thinking about that. Maybe I had needed everything to fall apart to find what was real. My job didn't define me. My relationship status didn't define me. Not even the pain defined me anymore. What defined me was this. I got back up. A week later, I sat in the very same coffee shop where Lisa and I first talked about Sam. She smiled as she listened to me talk about the retreat, the letter, and how I felt lighter somehow. I think you're ready, she said. Ready for what? To live again. She was right. That night, I stood on the balcony of my new place, watching the city lights flicker below. I thought about the girl who met Sam at that book club 10 years ago. I thought about the woman I am now. That girl wanted to be loved. This woman knows she's worthy of love, and maybe, just maybe, that makes all the difference. A month after I returned from the retreat, I received another letter. This time, it wasn't from Sam. It was from his mother. I almost didn't open it. I was in the middle of sorting mail, sipping tea in my new reading nook, when I saw her handwriting. So neat, so precise, just like I remembered from holiday cards and birthday notes. Curiosity got the best of me. The letter was brief. Dear Julia, I don't want to intrude. I know this isn't my place, but I heard what happened and I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not just for Sam's behavior, but for not seeing it sooner. I don't know what went wrong with him. He was always searching for something. Status, shortcuts, the easy life. But I do know this. You brought light into his life. And whether he ever deserved you or not, you changed him. He talks about you still. I don't think he knows who he is without you. I hope you're healing. And I hope you know you were always loved in this family. Warmly, Marilyn. The tears came unexpectedly. I hadn't cried in weeks. I thought I was past that stage. But something about that letter, the gentleness of it. The unexpected kindness broke something open in me. And not in a painful way. It was like finding a soft place in a world that had been sharp for too long. 2 days later, Sam showed up outside my building. I saw him through the window as I was returning from the gym. He was sitting on the bench out front, his hoodie pulled up, hands clasped between his knees like he didn't know what to do with them. He looked smaller than I remembered. I could have turned around, could have gone in through the side door, and pretended I never saw him. But I didn't. I walked up slowly. He looked up at the sound of my steps, eyes wide, uncertain. Hi, he said, standing. Hey, I replied, neutral. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. I'm in therapy. I blinked. Okay. I started 3 weeks ago. Group counseling, mostly. I didn't know who else to talk to. I didn't say anything. I know I hurt you, and I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to see you, to say that in person. He handed me a small envelope. This isn't a letter, it's just a list of everything I need to fix. For me. I took it. Out of curiosity, maybe. Out of respect. For the version of myself that had once loved him. He stepped back. That's all. I won't bother you again. As he walked away, I stood there, holding that envelope, not knowing whether to be angry, proud, or heartbroken all over again. Later that night, I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. What I'm working on. Understanding how manipulation becomes a habit. Learning how to stand on my own. Making amends without expecting forgiveness. Unlearning toxic masculinity. Finding purpose that doesn't depend on someone else carrying me. It wasn't an apology. It was a roadmap. I folded the paper and placed it in my drawer. Not because I wanted to hold on to it, but because part of me hoped he would follow through. For himself, not for me. That weekend, I took a solo trip to the mountains. I rented a cabin, one of those places with no cell service, and a wood-burning stove, and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. I sat outside for hours, wrapped in a flannel blanket, sipping coffee and watching deer move through the trees. I journaled. I reflected. I cried a little, laughed a little more. And then I made a choice I didn't expect to make. I forgave him, not by calling him, not by writing him back, but in my own heart. I forgave him, not because what he did was okay, not because it hurt any less, but because I no longer wanted to carry it with me. Forgiveness wasn't about freeing him, it was about freeing me. And once I made that decision, something shifted. I felt lighter. When I came back to the city, everything felt different. The streets were still noisy. My job was still demanding, but I wasn't walking through life with that heavy armor anymore. A month passed. Then 2. I started doing things just for the joy of them. I took a painting class. It was terrible. I was awful. But I laughed the whole time. I went to a spoken word poetry night and cried through 2 performances. I danced at a cousin's wedding like nobody was watching. I started smiling again. Genuinely. Not to convince people I was okay, but because I was. And then something beautiful happened. At a charity gala I nearly skipped, I met someone. His name was Mark. He wasn't flashy, didn't say all the right things, but he was kind, curious, thoughtful in a quiet, steady way. We talked for hours about books, travel, career burnout, and the joy of rediscovering yourself after loss. He didn't ask for my number, just said, "I'd love to talk more if you're open to it," and handed me his card. It wasn't a whirlwind. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was easy, in the best way. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt ready. I don't know where life will go from here. Maybe Mark and I will become something meaningful. Maybe not. But what I do know is this. I am no longer living in a story someone else wrote for me. This is my story now. I am the author. And I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose myself. Every time. To anyone out there starting over, it's not the end. Sometimes, it's the most beautiful beginning. It's been a year now. 1 full year since the day they found out the truth about my marriage. 1 year since my world broke wide open. 1 year since I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, what now? When I look back at who I was then, a woman who had given everything to someone who never truly saw her, I barely recognize her. And yet, I carry her with me. She's the reason I'm here. She's the reason I'm stronger. People ask me if I regret those 10 years. And the truth? I don't. Because those 10 years taught me how to love deeply, even when it wasn't returned in kind. They taught me what it means to give, to sacrifice, to build, and more importantly, they taught me how dangerous it can be to forget yourself in the process. A few weeks ago, I walked by the old bookstore where Sam and I first met. It's still there, tucked between a bakery and a florist, its crooked windows filled with handwritten staff picks and old typewriters. For a second, I felt a familiar ache in my chest, nostalgia laced with something heavier. But then, I stepped inside, not as a memory, not as a wound, just as a woman who still loves the smell of paper and the quiet joy of a hidden corner with a good story. I spent an hour there, bought 2 novels, drank a lukewarm chai latte from the back cafe, and I smiled, because even though some places remind you of pain, they don't have to hold you there forever. These days, my life looks nothing like what I pictured in my 20s. I don't have the big house in the suburbs. I don't host dinner parties for couple friends. I don't spend Sundays doing his and hers laundry. Instead, I live in a sunlit apartment with mismatched furniture and plants. I talk to more than I should. I've learned how to cook for one without it feeling lonely. I've learned how to travel solo and actually enjoy my own company. I've learned that silence isn't something to be filled. It's something to be embraced. I wake up without anxiety. I go to bed without pretending. And in between, I live with intention. That, to me, is peace. Mark and I are still seeing each other. It's slow, gentle, and real. He knows everything about my past, not because I dumped it all on him at once, but because he asked the right questions and waited patiently for the answers. He once told me, "You don't have to be fully healed to be loved well." And he was right. Healing is a journey, not a destination. Some days I still flinch when someone raises their voice. Some days I over-apologize or feel like I need to earn affection. But I'm aware of it now. I can name it. And more importantly, I can stop myself and say, that's the old wound talking. I'm not living there anymore. And that awareness? That's growth. I've started writing again. Not just journaling, but storytelling. Fiction, essays, even little letters to my younger self. I wrote one recently that I'd like to share with you. It's short, but it says everything I've learned. Dear me, you thought this would destroy you. You thought love had betrayed you. But what you didn't know was that this was never the end. It was the turning point. You were not broken. You were becoming. One day, you'll thank the pain for showing you who you are. One day, you'll stop asking why it happened, and you'll start asking, what can I build from here? And you'll build something beautiful. You already are. See, that letter lives on my fridge now, right next to a magnet that says, start where you are. Because that's all we can do, really. Start where we are. Again and again. To anyone listening to this, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, you will. But not because someone comes and saves you. You'll feel whole again because you'll remember. You were never meant to be completed by someone else. You were never broken. You were buried. And now, you're rising. Whether you're 25 or 65, it's never too late to choose yourself. To start again. To write a new chapter on your terms. As I sit here tonight, the window open, spring air drifting in, I feel grateful. Not for what happened, but for who I've become because of it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not scared. I'm free. And maybe that's the real love story. Not the one where someone chooses you, but the one where you choose yourself. And then, If someone else comes along and sees you for who you are, not who they need you to be, that's just the bonus. The real victory is living a life where you don't need to be anyone but you. Fully. Authentically. Joyfully. This is the life I never knew I needed, and I'm finally living it.